Lately, there's a conversation that keeps coming up in my circles, and the question is, have you started tutoring? Have you enrolled onto Kumon? Have you enrolled onto Ant? Have you enrolled for extra lessons? And I'm asking myself, my daughter is 6. Why do I need all this? And the even bigger question for me is, this is the British curriculum. It's respected around the world. I know back home in Kenya, if you were privileged when I was growing up, you could go onto the British system or IGCSE. So why do I need extra lessons? And so I had to take a step back and be like, wait a minute, am I missing something? Because so many parents, and especially parents, those of us who are living away from home, living beyond borders, are enrolling their children for extra classes from a young age, some older, some young. And I'm thinking, am I missing something? I thought this was not necessary. I thought I came away from a system that was too academic. I went through a very academic system, and we'll get into it in this video. So today, I want us to look at the British curriculum and extra tuition and whether it's necessary. We're looking at it from a parent point of view. No system is perfect. It's not a criticism of any system. It's just sharing information so that you're a better informed parent, especially if you're living in the UK or if you're living abroad. Welcome to A Broad Perspective. My name is Karen Ekwang, a Kenyan living in the UK. Here we talk about all things moving abroad, the kind of mindsets we need to have in order to thrive and live a fruitful life beyond borders. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And as we go along with the video, if you enjoy it, like it, share it with your friends and family so that we can reach more people. Me trying to understand the British curriculum is also personal for me because I also want to understand what kind of academic journey my daughter is going on to. Like I said, I studied all my school, primary to university in Kenya, so this is a new system for me. And we're going to break down this video. I think the best part first is to look at what is the British curriculum, what does it entail, when are they assessed, what are they assessed on, how does it look like, and then we're going to go in, that's part one. And then I'll also talk about my comparison between this system and the system back home, the system I went to, what I like about it and what I don't like. And then in part two, we are going to go into what is this extra tuition, what's offered, why is it so popular here in the UK? I realize it's really popular. Why is it so popular? And what is the competition that is driving people to take their children for extra tuition and whether it's necessary for you. I'll also tell you why I enrolled my daughter onto Kumon and then I stopped and why I'm thinking about going back to it. So we'll talk about all that in part two. So let's get into it. I have my laptop here, so I'll be referring to some of the notes. So first of all, let's look at what's the British curriculum. So the national curriculum, which is what is offered in most state schools, is a set of subjects and standards used by primary and secondary schools so that children learn the same things. It covers what subjects are taught and the standards children should reach in each subject. So there are other types of schools like church schools and academies and private schools, and they do not have to follow the national curriculum. But academies must teach a broad and balanced curriculum, including English, math, and science. So especially in England, you'll find many church schools and academies, and they don't have to follow the national curriculum. They have some leeway, and of course, private schools don't have to. But we're really not going to go into the details of state academies and all that. So you can find more on that information on the gov.uk website, which is where I found most of the information here as well. So the first one is primary. So the curriculum is divided into key stages. First one, primary. So you have early years foundation, which is nursery and reception. And then you have key stage 1 and key stage 2, which is primary. And then you have key stage 3 and key stage 4, which is secondary school. So let's look at Key Stage 1. So Key Stage 1 is year 1 and year 2. Equivalent to, I think now, what I went through as class 1, or what is now grade 1 and grade 2. So year 1 and year 2, the kids are 6 years in year 1, 7 years in year 2. So in year 1, the focus is phonics and early foundation for mathematics. What usually happens in year 1 is a screening test. I didn't know this. I discovered when I was doing this research. So in June of year 1, they'll do a phonics test to test whether your child is getting the basics of pronunciation. So they'll read out a number of words. So that's done in year 1. If your child passes, fine. If not, you will be informed, you'll get the results, and they can repeat the screening test in year 2. But here there's no repeating. Remember our time when we were growing up, there was repeating. And then in year 2, there are optional tests in math, English, reading and grammar, punctuation and spelling, and optional teacher assessments in math, science, English, reading and writing. Year 3, there's no assessment. In year 4, when the child is 8 to 9, they do a times table check. In year 5, there's no assessment. In year 6, there are national tests in English, reading, math, and grammar, punctuation, and spelling. And then there are teacher assessments in English, writing, and science. Now, the assessment in year 6 is important because it can determine where your child goes to secondary school. And some of these secondary schools, especially like grammar schools, are very competitive. So it's important that your child passes that exam. And then we go to Key Stage 3. Now the child is in secondary school. They're between 12 to 14. So year 7 to year 9, between 12 to 14, there's really no assessment. Key Stage 4, now 14 to 15 years, year 10, some kids take GCSEs. And then 15 to 16, year 11, most children take GCSEs or other national tests. So that's a summary, a rundown of how the system runs. Now, at the end of each summer term, what's important to know is the school will write an assessment, the teacher will write an assessment of how they think your child is doing, and you will get that report. There are also teacher meetings during the term where you can discuss your child's progress, but I'll talk about it more at the end when I'm comparing the two systems. Now let's look at the subjects they learn. There's English, math, science, design and technology, history, geography, art and design, music, physical education, computing, ancient and modern foreign languages, especially at Key Stage 2. Primary schools also need to provide relationship and health education and religious education, but you may choose to take your child out of these lessons. The tutoring platforms I have seen mostly offer math and English, which is what most people concentrate on. Schools can also choose to teach on personal, social, and health education, citizenship, modern foreign languages, sex education, and you may choose to take your child out of the sex education lessons. Key Stage 3 and 4, they learn English, math, science, history, geography, modern foreign languages, design and technology, music, physical education, citizenship, computing. With the same, schools are also supposed to offer relationship health education, just like previous, religious and sex education, but you can choose to take your child out of it. So really, not very different from primary level, but you have things like art and design added in there and modern foreign languages in secondary school and music. So at Key Stage 4, when the kids take GCSEs, they can work towards, they can focus towards GCSEs or technical awards. The core subjects are English, math, and science, and I think that's why these tutoring platforms concentrate on English and math. One of the key differences between this system and the system back home is after Key Stage 4, so when you take your GCSEs, You can either focus on going to uni, or you can focus on getting like technical skills or getting technical awards. And I think that's one big difference we have. For a long time in our system, and I think it's still the case now, after Form 4, which is the equivalent at when you take GCSEs, then most people are looking at going to university if you want to have like a good career or a better future, as opposed to the other technical colleges, which really are deemed to be for people who don't perform well or would not really do well um, in life. That's the perception. But here it's different. You can go into an apprenticeship and like be properly trained and get a proper career out of that. You do not have to go to uni. So that's one of the difference. And at GCSEs, the kind of subjects you take then determine what kind of courses, of course, you can take and what kind of path you want to take. Now, the system which I went through back home, which is 844, which is 8 years in primary, 4 years in secondary, and 4 years in university. You sit national exams at class 8. You sit another national exam at Form 4, which is equivalent to when people are sitting GCSE. The main difference is this these exams were make or break. These exams were big events in the whole nation. They are big events, and your performance in KCSE determines the kind of school you go to in high school. So if you perform well, you go to a good school. You don't perform well, then you kind of have a problem. Same, you perform well at Form 4, you get to go to a good you go to a good course, go to a good uni. If you don't perform well, and especially at our time, so right now the minimum entry level for university has been reduced, but my time, if you got a grade below B plus, you're not gonna be able to go to uni unless you're privately sponsored by your parents, which was very expensive. So these were like groundbreaking events for you as a student, and you knew it was make or break for you. A bit different here. Then exams, the assessments, like the assessments now, let's go back to the assessments. Like at year 1, at year 4, first of all, they're not, as we used to do an exam at the end of every term, and it's part of your report, like your progress report. So there's a lot of pressure to perform. I remember feeling under a lot of pressure in primary school to perform, under a lot of pressure and under a lot of competition. So here, the year ones, the screening, there's really not competition. It's not students against students being pitched against each other, which I feel is the system we went through. So it's screening test, same at year 4, same across. Even the exam at year 6 that determines your going into secondary school is not a national event the way it was a national event for us, and it's announced nationally and all that. So that's one of the differences I see. There is no like competition, or rather the stress on academics is not as overt as it was back home. There is still some level of competition, we'll talk about it later, but it's not as much, the pressure is not so much on the student as it was for us. The ranking, what number were you, that's not here. So as a parent, having gone through the rigorous academic system and education system, I find this system really relaxed. I find it very relaxed. And maybe that's what pushes some people to take their children for extra tuition. I don't know. Please tell me your reasons in the comments. But I find it very relaxed. Learning through play, like I said, my daughter is in year 1, so I'm still experiencing the system. The learning is through play, through activities, through cinema, through shows. It's practical learning, as opposed to us, which was book and pen and paper and listening to the teacher. It's practical learning. The classrooms are vibrant, they have so many activities and so many things to do. So learning through play is what I have noticed, and what I like about it as well, because early years, exactly what are you learning? I mean, the other thing is the ranking is not there. I've talked about it. The progress in school. So you have a parent-teacher meetings. The progress meetings are more around behavior, are more about, are they achieving the milestones for their age, and less about ranking, less about academics, which also I really enjoy, because for me it's a partnership between the teacher and us, so that the things we're enforcing at home, they're also enforcing in school. So learning about behavior, learning about progress, that's what really the the progress at every term is about, even the progress report. Like even the way the progress report is really less around ranking, which is a system I'm used to, and for me really I have to change my mind to look at it that way. I've also noticed, like for example, we were talking in the office sometime last year. Some of my colleagues, their children were receiving awards for performing well in their classes, and these kids get a letter, and this letter is only issued to the kids who have performed well, and the award ceremony is only attended by the kids who have performed well, not everyone, because they don't want other kids to feel bad and something like that. Us, I remember my primary school would be paraded from number one to number last in your class, paraded from number one to number last. So there was that feeling of, you can imagine the person who's there number last. Fine, if you're at the top, you're probably feeling, yeah, a bit smug, but the people who are always number last, I don't know what that did to them. So for here, that's really not there. So it's more silent and rewarding the people. Yes, there's a reward for those who are doing well, but it's not in the face of those who are not doing well. At least for the school, this is Wales. I'm talking about Wales and the school my daughter goes to. I don't know about England. We'll find out soon. The other thing I also like is the celebration of like national days like Poppy Day, Pajama Days, World Book Days, all these activities incorporated into their learning, which really opens up their mind, in my view. So I had very little of that. I guess probably in Kenya there are schools that do that, but when growing up I had very little of that. So I like that. And then the first day, it also took me a minute to like keep up with all these days and all these things. And there's a time my daughter almost went without a costume for what was it, World Book Day, but we did like a last minute arrangement for Matilda character for her. So that's big here, and activities. And I also like that there are extracurricular activities after school. There's a range of extracurricular activities you can enroll your child into, whether in school or out of school, but there's also a cost to it. So there's also a thing around income and income equality, but they're available. They're affordable options, and there are many options. As much as you have time and money, you can enroll your child to as many extracurricular activities as possible. Currently, because we live in Wales, the county we are in has a requirements for most schools. So there are Welsh medium schools that deliver learning in Welsh, and those that deliver learning in English medium schools. But there's a big push for the Welsh language. So for me, currently, my daughter is learning Welsh, and she can speak a bit of Welsh, not fluently, but she's learning the language. So depending on where you are, of course, that's not a requirement in England. I don't know about Scotland, but that's one of the things. One thing that is very important as we come to extra tuition is you have to spend time. What I've learned, you really have to spend time with your child. You can't just depend on the school system to um, to push or to see the progress in your child. You really have to spend time, whether it's homework, whether it's extra activities, whether it's reading, whether it's getting books from the library and reading and teaching her basic math. You really have to spend time with your child. Even the kind of activities they come home with, especially in the early years and year one, you really have to spend time with the child. This is something I have learned and something I've had to do. In the beginning we had, like, I had the Montessori app, I had the, what is it, Splashland. We kept getting books from the library. You can always get books. I love this about it. You can always get books cheaply at the charity shop. You can always get second hand. You can always hand down and get hand me down. So there's a, a, a lot of resource. There's a lot of resource if you want your child to learn, but you really have to be involved. So you have to invest the time and the money, and sometimes the money, but mostly, and as early years, you really have to spend the time to teach your child. And I saw a difference when I started spending time as opposed to when I just left her to depend on the system of school. And that's when at some point I enrolled her onto Kumon, because I thought, okay, easy way for her to learn and to do English. We did it for a few months and then we came out of it. But I will tell you more in the next video. But that's my comparison of the two systems. This one is more relaxed, but I think it's more practical and more wide ranging. It's less theoretical, I must admit, I was taught really theoretically. I learned really theoretically, and I think you get to learn the the practical much later in life, but it's different here. And then two interesting things I also learned when I went. And guys, I keep saying mindset shift. So we are going for a progress report for my daughter, and then they give you this book to read before you get in. And then I saw this book, and I saw there were these like 5 or 6 aspects on this book, and one had one smiley face, the other one had two, the other one had really many smiley faces, one had one, others didn't have. And I looked at my daughter and I was like, we're going to have a conversation today. Why don't all these have marks? Like, I thought the smiley faces were marks, you know. Why don't they all have marks? What have you been doing? Have you really been listening? You know, those are the things that were going on in my mind before we went to see the teacher. And then we went and talked to the teacher, and the teacher told us the complete opposite. So then my husband asked about the smiley faces, and the teacher was like, this is, I just write here when I think, when I see she has done something that I have noticed on that aspect, then I put a smiley face and I put another sticker and I put another. It has nothing to do with ranking or performance. And yeah, I had to catch myself. But the other thing she told me, which I found really interesting, is she said at this time, so now we're looking at her pronunciation, and she was doing very well in terms of pronunciation. But she said right now, and especially in terms of spelling, she's not there at spelling. She's like, we're not putting so much focus on spelling because we know by the time they're getting grown up and getting into the job market, they won't really need it. They might be speaking into which is the truth. I mean, in terms of technology, they might be speaking into a device or into something, so they may not really need the spelling um, to get it accurately. There's so many grammar checking softwares these days, and so they're not really giving stress to the kids at that age around spelling. Other classes are still doing spelling, but I don't know how that's gonna look like as we go ahead. Tell me what your experience has been in this system. But I find it really relaxed and really wide and broad compared to back home, and probably that's one of the advantages or disadvantages. So we've looked at the British curriculum. I've compared it to our very vigorous academic system. Now we're going to go into part 2 and look at tutoring and why it's a big industry. So please stay tuned. Please let me know in the comments what other questions you would like me to answer, and let me know your experience. And part 2 is coming soon. So stay tuned.